Welcome back to First Look into our information segment this morning. As promised, our series Monday meeting with the ministers, it continues this morning. This morning we're sitting with our very own minister, the Honorable Melford Nicholas. He's responsible, of course, for ICTs, information and communication technologies, and also for utilities and energy. Mr. Minister, welcome to the set.
Thank you and good morning. Good morning to all of your respective audiences, both home and abroad.
Indeed. Let's start with the obvious question. For the last 2.5 years, so you've had perhaps the toughest job in government to look at the provision of utility services, particularly water in this country. Notably, we have had improvements, not just through the news, through the taps, of course. We've seen that there's been an increased flow. Journal for us what that has been like. Where are we now in terms of the provision of water to households across the country?
Well, I think we've gotten up to, there's been steady progress, I have to say, and I would go as far as to say that we've had some breakthrough moments. We have gotten to a point of producing for a steady period up to 9 million gallons of water. The first time in recorded history that APA has been able to do that. But more importantly, we continue to expand the capacity of our generating capacity. Last week, Monday, I had the opportunity to journey out to Barnacle Point to look at the progress of the build-out of the second Seven Seas plant. And when that comes on board, that will give us an opportunity to have a further 2 million gallons of water per day. So we're expected to top the 11 million gallon mark before the end of the year. And we still have yet another plant to construct because we're doing demolition now on the old Tango facility at Crabs. And when that is complete, the 3.2 million gallon plant that we had originally earmarked for Bethesda, we're going to be installing that. So that combined will bring us up to 14 million gallons capacity. And we reckon that at that level, we should be able to sustainably provide water to everyone on the island now and in the foreseeable future. There are still some aspects of the water distribution system that is going to be the more intractable problem. We are going to be certainly looking at fixing some of the hydraulic problems that we have in the north of the island. In particular, I was at service yesterday and someone from, I was as a church yesterday, and someone from one of the hills just across the road from here indicated that they have gotten water for the first in a long while. And that has to do with the fact that to get water into the higher elevations, it has been a challenge, but the Cuban team of engineers that have been here have designed or taken a second look at our hydraulic system and have come up with some new designs which we're going to be putting in place in the coming weeks, months, and we will be resolving that problem.
There's been some work as well in terms of surface water, groundwater. Here work we've done with some of the dams, Potworks Dam in particular. How are we where that's concerned?
That is more long-term because there has been, on the southern spillway, closer to the Delapse Waterworks treatment plant, the spillway has been damaged. And so what that means is that whenever there is enough surface water that runs off and fills the dam area, a significant percentage of it gets leaked back into the sea without us being able to harvest it. And so we're going to be looking at fixing that spillway to ensure that whenever there rainfall, the dam can accommodate and hold up to 2 billion gallons of water. And when that happens, it should give us a complement to what we're doing with the Arrow water. Similarly, in the Bendel's area, there are a whole series of water catchment systems that we need to fix as well. Some of these spillways have become worn and are leaking as well. So we're looking at improving all of these particular areas. But this is going to be the background fix because with the batteries of Arrow plants that we have, we are going to be able to give the Antiguan public what they're searching for without reference to these fixes. The reason why we have to fix them is that we want to be truly resilient. In times when we have adequate rainfall and good surface water catchment systems, it is cheaper to produce potable water from that source. And so we will have the option of improving our operational efficiencies. But whenever there is dry weather and the drought conditions set in, with the battery of our plants that we have, we're going to be able to still maintain the level of potable water in the pipes.
We've broached the idea of the very low rates we pay for water in this country. And it's been linked to, of course, responsible use of water. There has been some talk about increasing those rates at some point. At what point do we say we've had a steady flow of water, those rates will need to be revisited, and that we'll see those changes implemented?
Well, I had said when we did the Fort James plant, the second plant at Fort James, that at some point in the future, when we are able to give every community, every household in Antigua a regular supply of water, we have to return to this question about the subsidized costs for water. I think we're nearing that point, and I imagine by the end of the year, we would make that momentous move to be able to say now that everyone has water. We understand the value of it. When it is not available, people complain. So now that we have it, there must be some relation to what people pay in relation to being able to have this important and expensive commodity. I don't want to give any alarms to the public, though. We have had a study that was completed about probably 6 years ago by the World Bank. That forms the baseline of our analysis, but the government itself has an all-encompassing and caring view. So there are going to be vulnerable people in the society that are still going to require the care and protection of the government, and we will do that in the consideration of whatever price increases that we have to put forward.
I have to ask, as you mentioned the word resilience, Mr. Minister, about the resilience of our plants, whether for water or for electricity. You're responsible for APUA. We are in the hurricane season. Have there been any plans made in terms of ensuring that we're able to not only supply but to keep the system safe in this period?
Well, at the moment, two things are happening. At much strain, the management team has indicated that they had to fortify the standby materials in the event that there is a heavy storm that invariably would do damage to the infrastructure, down poles, broken lines. And so they had to stockpile that equipment and additional transformers. That is in hand. But in addition to that, some preventive work is now being done. The APUA has employed, I think at least 3 or 4 teams who are out now doing the trimming of the overgrown trees and branches that would normally cause the utility services to trip in times of inclement weather. But in any case, once we're in an hurricane warning during that period, for safety purposes, APUA will be obliged to shed electricity. And so far as any recovery after the storm, there will have to be surveillance done, reconnaissance, visits to go to see whether or not there are any down lines to ensure that we do not energize any fallen lines that will cause harm and danger to our communities.
Let's go to another form of utilities in terms of telecommunications. We've talked about number portability for a while. I know earlier this year you said that this year it will come to fruition. Any updates on that?
Yes. Early this year, I believe in February, I inserted myself in the conversation and really demanded a tighter timeline from the operators. It's taken far longer than I had anticipated. It has come down now to the lagging indicator, really, and unavoidably, it's the Local Public Utilities Authority, APUA. And this is not to throw, any derision at them. I think APUA has been managing a numerous amount of projects this year. The completion, the negotiations with the Celia cable, that was a major undertaking. The resources comes from the central pool, and I too have been guilty of making water a priority. So they had really to come back from behind that, those two realities. I think what they've said to me now, and to the telecommunications unit at my ministry is that we're working with a consultant. APUA has hired on another consultant. They had the unfortunate situation where the original gentleman who had been leading the implementation with APUA passed away. And there was a 6-month gap in which they had to find additional personnel. But that person is on board now. And I reckon they have planned to give me 2-week updates. I'm due to get one this week. But the forecast was that it would take them another 3 months before they are able to get to that frontier. Well, the other operators have already indicated their readiness. And so I think within the next 3 months, we should be in a position to complete the process.
In terms of legislation governing telecommunications in this country, for a long time you've been a proponent of the Telecommunications Bill and Act. How do you see that overarching legislative document guiding telecommunications in this country?
You know, I remember there was this group called Wadadli. We had a reggae band named Wadadli, and they used to like to think about Wadadli experience that came from afar. This conversation with telecommunications has come from such a long way away. But it's still a matter that's on my front burner. And I want to ensure that we revisit that initiative before the end of this legislative cycle. The AG has certainly asked me to look at it. I know that there are members of the public, to include the Chamber of Commerce and other interested parties, who have expressed an interest in commenting on the bill before it gets to the House. And so I tend to give all parties that opportunity. One of the issues that has delayed the enactment of the bill, however, had been the existential threat or fear that, more existential fear that was held within the bowels of APUA. They were of the view that they needed to make certain changes, certain investments, and the last one being access to their own offshore fiber cable capacity. So I think now that those hurdle points are out of the way, we need to just revisit the legislation and to become acquainted with the imperatives of what needs to happen now. I certainly long for it. We are having new entrants in the market. Just last week, we issued an offer of a license to Starlink, and we had no choice because the technology that they're utilizing is not something that we have any control over. It's coming from the sky, and the only way that we're going to be able to have any type of influence with what they're doing is by giving them a license to operate, and so by so doing, managing that. But I long for having the telecommunications regulatory authority such that it sits to an extent independent of the ministry, of the minister, and that it is equipped and staffed by competent persons who understand technology, who would look at the legislation, will be able to hold each and every one of the operators, including APUA's feet to the fire, and stand in the breach for the consumer. And this is no different, and it's going to be no different to the role that the FSRC plays in managing the affairs of the offshore banks, or that the central bank plays in managing the affairs of the local banks, or the FSRC plays in managing the insurance companies. The government wholly owns a state insurance company, but it is still subject to the regulations on the law that is overseen by the FSRC. So when the telecommunications regulatory authority comes into being with the enactment of the bill, that authority will have supervisory management of the telecommunications marketplace. And I'm longing for that as well.
You briefly mentioned subsea fibers, cables. A quick update on that in terms of provision.
Well, the initial thing that had to happen, we had to complete the investment cycle. And APUA's role in it, we were ably funded and supported by a consortium of banks who loaned us the money based on a number of undertakings that we had to give them. But the process to build out, it was always on the card that it was going to take 3 years to complete. Having said that, though, between now and when the cable is finally landed, we have a commercial agreement that we're now forging with Liberty Latin America to APUA secure a more favorable lease and fiber offshore from Ireland. When that is complete, I would expect that, coupled with the fiber to the home network that APU had put in place in 2022, I mentioned this at the launch of the new store on Market Street on Friday. I would expect a rollout of a new product, a new sets of product that will make fiber, well, not fiber, but broadband services more affordable and available to the Antiguan public. I've been asking for since 2016 a VITS product for the market here, because I think the entry point for true broadband, it's a bit too high for the consumer base. And I expect APUA to provide that leadership.
So many areas to discuss under your portfolio. I want to ask about cybersecurity, Mr. Minister. Of course, our cybersecurity systems here labeled nascent, growing, but still perhaps not where we need to be. Any plans to shore up where we are in terms of cybersecurity?
Well, later on this year, and I'm thinking about September, we will be completing the cycle of establishing our own CERT, which is the Computer Emergency Response Teams, within the Ministry of ICT itself. But that CERT will be responsible for overseeing the cybersecurity function in all government departments. And once they are fully established and in tune with their own work, we will move to establish a national CERT that will be working with other organizations outside of the central government, to include the statutory bodies, to include companies like the telecommunications operators. Because the thing about cybersecurity is that the attacks could come from anywhere. And we have had certain cyber attacks, some targeting specific industry players like the gaming operators. And it has had the effect of rendering networks of at least one operator crippled and inoperable for a period of time. So cybersecurity is everybody's business, but we are doing that. I'm satisfied that we have the intellectual leadership to get to the front of that line. Our own guardian, Hector Morel, our Director of Cybersecurity, has traveled extensively. She too has been involved in establishing a number of protocols, both within the context of the European Union, Caribbean and Latin America, and at the United Nations level. I think that she should complete the last visit and the last engagement at the UN to really bring forward this issue of cybersecurity in terms of how we're going to treat this matter globally. But we are connected, and we will be connected with other CERTs within the Caribbean and within Latin America. And those protocols that are established will allow us to be able to pursue, interdict, detect, and manage the whole cybersecurity environment going forward.
Can't let you leave my feet being held to the fire as well and ask about the move for ABS. I know we talked about looking at those plans. I know the Works Ministry is extremely busy. Any plans have progressed in that area?
Well, there are going to be two phases to it. One is going to be the immediate relief. The teams here, including yourselves, have given incredible service to the country by the work that the high quality work that you continue to produce. And the environment here in which you are obliged to operate is far less than what I would feel comfortable. And so I tip my hat off to the management team and all the staff who have continued to work in this environment. So right now at this moment, the Ministry of Public Works is completing the engagement with the proprietors of Caribbean Cinema, and we will make that first initial move. And while that move has taken place, we have now the technical information that we wanted from the consultant to complete the rest of to start the build-out of the permanent home for ABS at the Sunshine Car Park Hub. And that again is an undertaking that will be led by Public Works. And you're correct that they do have the quiver filled with the work that is expected with them in terms of the road program. But in all of the ministries, mine included, we have to walk and chew gum at the same time. So I intend to press forward on both those events, and I expect ABS to be in new quarters, certainly within the third quarter, at the end of the third quarter, but certainly before the end of the year. And I would expect too that the rehabilitation of the Sunshine Car Park Hub would start this year as well. It's going to take a while to build it out, but I expect both events to take place this year.
Just about 30 seconds left, Mr. Minister. I'll give you the final word in terms of ending. Any final words you'd like to leave with the audience?
Well, I would say that this has been a pretty tough last 2 years, but a tough period in which I've enjoyed it. I've seen the fruits of the work that I put in, ably supported, of course, by the many staff who work in my ministry and in the public utilities as well. And I think that the public have seen the result of that effort. Even at the community level, I try to make myself available and most Thursdays to go into the community. Sometimes that is not always possible. I have to travel on occasions, and on occasions there's the imperative of Parliament, as it happened last Thursday. But even at the community level, we have done quite a few nice things at the community level with the young people, with the senior citizens. I continue to invest in infrastructure. There is a civilian pedestrian bridge that is nearing completion now. I'm pretty proud of that piece of work because it does not follow the bridges of the past where we deal with motor vehicle. This really spans a particular pathway that many people use in the community. And in the past, they had to go down into the depths of the trench to be able to get past. And so we built something modern, and I think when it's completed, the folks are going to be pretty proud of it. There's other work that I have to do, certainly before the end of this term. I intend to rebuild that whole Sports Street area, and I've already indicated that I want to rename it the John Eugene St. Louis Plaza in recognition of his own work in the community and on whose shoulder I stand. And I intend to bring a commerce park in that area, but more on that will happen in the short weeks. I've already seen the architect's rendition, and I'm pretty happy about it. But we're going to be able to do that. We're going to be rebuilding the pan house, and we're going to be refixing the basketball court and having a look again at the perimeter fencing for the sports field. So when we're complete, and of course, we're having a conversation with the Department of the Environment about building our own hurricane shelter within the community that will act as well as a home recreational center for our senior citizens. So lots of work is planned for this term, and I can't say that I will complete all of it this year, but God willing, we will start most of it, and if we continue to persevere, I'm sure that before there is a next call for renewal of my contract, I will have those things to talk about. And of course, I imagine that the community will give due credit for that type of work. But I'm fully engaged on all levels at the community level and all my ministerial functions. I just wanted to shout out as well to the University of West Indies. I think it was clear that Antigua is involved in all aspects of its work, even from the standpoint of the UNESCO report that showed that Antigua's AI readiness, though there are some gaps, we did get a lot of favorable responses from that. So we have documentation that we have to work about, the whole idea of digitalizing the rest of the government. We're focusing heavily now on the civil registry. We want to be able to get by the end of the year a digital identity, and that will form the basis of what we do across government in terms of how quickly we're going to be able to automate the operations of government. But again, as I said, we're fully engaged, and I'm happy with the results of the work that we're getting.
So many questions, more questions we could have asked you. Perhaps we need a longer sit down. What I wanted to ask as well about the Digital Training Academy, so many other things, but perhaps another time, Mr. Minister.
Perhaps another time.
The Honourable Minister responsible for ICTs, Utilities and Energy, our guest this morning on a Monday meeting with the ministers right here on ABS Television. Thank you so much for having joined us. The rest of Antigua Barbuda today comes up right here next to include, of course, the unveiling of the semi-finalists for the Eclipse Monarch competition. Please stay with us.